When you have such a complex problem as climate change, Earth system science, interactions between natural and human systems, defining expertise itself can be a challenge. And there are books and articles and chapters written on the periodic table of expertise, which is really interesting to look at. So in terms of defining expertise, equally problematic is the situation where climate scientists use their platform to unhelpfully state poorly thought out positions that are beyond their realm of expertise. This happens quite often, and most of us in climate science may be guilty of it because we always agree to do, let's say, media interviews or public discussions or speak in public fora where people ask questions which are beyond climate science, and we tend to slide into those answers without properly thinking through the aspects that are not really part of our expertise. So expertise should be valued, of course. To avoid devaluing it, experts should take care to emphasize what expertise they have. Okay, that's what I mean when you talk to the public or the media. Always put a caveat what your expertise is, and if you're going beyond, say that clearly, and also to be clear about what expertise we don't have. That's also very important, saying I'm going to say this, but this is not my expertise, and so on. Okay, so looking at the role of science and scientists in decision making, as I mentioned before, casually, but I think this is true. In general, scientists tend to overestimate the value of science in decision making. There are many factors going in that matter. Scientists can be viewed as one of many groups of stakeholders in a contested field of knowledge. Climate change is definitely one of them. In terms of inputs that informs decision making. So we are not the main guys providing input, but we are one of the stakeholders with our own interest in the outcome. That's important to remember as well. Within this possibility space, Roger Pilkey Jr. I think provides a framework for 4 roles scientists should and can play. A pure scientist operates detached from stakeholder fray, building evidence on a narrow issue. So, as I mentioned early on in this chapter, climate change has become now center stage because of the climate change impacts on everything from daily life to travel, consumption, resources, and expectations of how we affect the climate change ourselves. And can a climate scientist completely remain isolated, insulated from the debates about climate change and just do his science? Many do. Science arbiter, a consultant, for instance, similarly operates under the linear model of science in society, but presents information on a range of issues. So you stand up and say, this is what my science says, these are the uncertainties, this is the assumptions that go into it, and that's it. An issue advocate, on the other hand, gathers selected arguments to present in the multi-stakeholder context. So in this case, we are taking our knowledge of atmospheric science, ocean warming, combining with cyclones, observations, and then kind of advocating that cyclones are rapidly intensifying in the Indian Ocean, even though a robust definition of rapid intensification in the Indian Ocean is not yet developed. Right? So we extend a little bit there. An honest broker seeks to present the available alternatives in the contested stakeholder space. So in that case, let's say Mumbai got hit by a couple of cyclones. One skipped by and one did some little bit of rain. And immediately there is arguments that Arabian Sea is warming and maybe more cyclones are coming. But if you go and look at the past data, there have been periods where Mumbai got cyclones. So how do you separate the natural multi-decadal variability from potential contribution of climate change and Arabian Sea warming into increasing strikes on Mumbai? this is not yet clear. So that the difficulty there is, do you wait long enough to get evidence for attribution, or do you take a honest broker approach and provide alternatives saying it could be natural variability, but with sea level rise, this is what could happen with Arabian Sea warming. Even a naturally born cyclone could intensify, and so on. So you have a very different view than saying we are headed to disaster. Climate science risks being discredited by the perceived association between the communication of well-established science on climate change with the advocacy by some of particular positions, for instance on population, aviation, economic growth, energy policy, or geoengineering, that do not actually follow from science. Okay, especially I will touch on population, which particularly irks me because usually that goes after populous countries and then draws conclusions that are just wrong. Or, for example, saying don't travel ignores the fact that travel has always been a big part of socio-cultural evolution of humanity, human societies, cultural diversity, awareness, exchanges, etc. Okay? In improving the engagement of science with decision makers and wider society, there are several things science can already provide. Observations of what is happening, models seeking to explain what is happening together with the analysis of their consistency with observations. So, for example, if El Nino is being argued to change in a certain way under global warming, from models that haven't explained how and if El Nino has already responded to warming, can be problematic. This is seriously problematic. Okay, what if answers, though many questions remain, including estimating the consequences of policies on multiple scales, adaptation, remember, to inform decisions about their overall effectiveness. So this is where we have to kind of always be aware of what information we are bringing to the table, what is our role in putting this information on the table. Is it as a policy advisor, as advocates of a particular position, as one of the stakeholders around the table, and so on, right? And being very clear about what expertise we have and how the information we are putting on the table is consistent with the expertise and consistent with the existing knowledge, or verified, validated against past examples of whatever information we are putting on the table. It's whether it's monsoon, what the monsoon is doing, what agriculture is doing, what El Nino is doing, what cyclones are doing, and so on.